Arsenal are entering the final 2 weeks of the transfer window, but there is still plenty of business still to complete, both with incomings and outgoings. Yesterday, Arsenal took a bit of a bump, but the door remains open to players to leave, and negotiations are ongoing for others. Plus, an offer turned down for an Arsenal goalkeeper, and plenty more in today's Arsenal Transfer News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. It is incredibly appreciated. I hope you've had a fantastic week so far and that you started the week very well indeed. Because it's, I think in times where, transfers are not being particularly great, we obviously need to, we need to sort ourselves out. We need to focus on the better, more happier things maybe in life because transfers aren't bringing it to us. But there's a lot to talk about in today's show. And apologies for the slight late start. I was actually releasing an article out this morning, so I was a little bit distracted. And that article is something I'm going to discuss with you in just a second because it is some new info. But good morning to those joining us in the chat box. Good morning to Jitty, Sean, Pat, Wilson, Paul, Adegoke, Rowan, Shanor, Martin, Tony, and Paul, runs with cows, Rob, NSW, Maximia, Z, Jackie, Ogunjobi, Jack, Stevie, Ameka, Angela, and plenty more of you guys and girls as well. Thank you for tuning in. Yes, please do, if you haven't done so already, to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. But without further ado, we're going to kick off with the story that I literally just released 4 minutes ago now over on football.london. And that is that a few of you in the chat box were asking about the latest on compensation fees for the likes of Real Waters and Mario Cozier-Duberry. Well, I did some digging on this yesterday and was told that there isn't one yet because they are still being negotiated. Arsenal are still in discussions with Luton Town and with Brighton and, of course, soon to be Manchester United. We also imagine with Chido Obi Martin moving in that direction, there'll be a number of discussions still going on for the compensation fees of these players because, of course, they came through the academy and because they were being discussed by the academy, obviously developed by them. Arsenal are entitled to compensation fees when these players do leave. So Arsenal will get fees, but they need to be negotiated and agreed with their new clubs. So just some new information there for you. Meanwhile, again, very, very recently, David Ornstein releasing his piece this morning over on The Athletic. I recommend you go and read the entire thing. Talking about Aaron Ramsdale. Arsenal have rejected an approach from Ajax to sign Aaron Ramsdale. It was an initial loan that was turned down. Arsenal would rather the player leaves, if indeed he does leave, kind of this summer. It is a permanent deal. However, Ajax are said to still retain interest in the player and supposed optimism over a signing. And it is said that the Espanyol keeper, Joan Garcia, who is a very decent young goalkeeper, is considered to be the player that would come in should Arsenal sell Ramsdale. I would be surprised if Ramsdale is still here come the end of the window, but it could require the likes of Ajax stumping up quite a bit of money to be able to get it done. Whether or not they've got that money remains to be seen. But that is the scenario that Arsenal, of course, are in right now with Ramsdale, and it's a very difficult one for him. I think that he would be open to a move to Ajax, and that's a good move, still playing, good level football, of course. But I don't know if they managed to qualify. I'm just having a quick check on their Eredivisie table from last season because they endured a pretty tricky campaign. They finished 5th. So I don't know if that's Europa Conference League qualification, or maybe they're in the qualifying round for the Conference League. Just have a quick look to see if I can find them anywhere. But I don't know if they're going to be involved in any kind of European football for next season or not. I guess we will have to wait and see. But it's still a good move, I think, for Ramsdale if indeed he was to move there, and they would be expected to be back at the top towards the end of the Eredivisie once again. Moving forwards, though, and the biggest story yesterday in terms of an outgoing was, of course, Eddie and Nketiah. Marseille have agreed a deal now for El Yawahi, the Lens centre forward, and have therefore pulled out of a move for Eddie and Nketiah, which caused mass hysteria on social media yesterday. You, of course, would have all have seen this story and the reaction, of course, to this as well, because Eddie Nketiah, as we know, Arsenal turned down a proposal that was said to be 27 million euros. Now, I want to stress this because I think this is obviously being misconstrued and misrepresented, sadly, by quite a lot of people. We are completely out of the know of how that 27 million euro deal, which was supposedly a loan with an obligation to buy at that figure, how that was structured. We don't know how it was structured. It could have been a certain amount up front. It could have been a significant portion of that on add-ons, and Arsenal have rejected that 27 million euros. It is thought that the proposal that Arsenal are willing to accept is a loan with an obligation to buy at 30 million euros, which people, of course, have then gone, why would you turn down 27 million euros if you want 30? But it's really important to stress that these deals are structured in certain ways. Some amount of money are paid up front. Add-ons are, of course, included, how the deal is broken up as well. So it's not a case of, oh, Arsenal are holding out for just 3 million euros more. It's a case of how the deals are structured too. So I got quite frustrated, as you may have saw on social media yesterday, of people saying, I can't believe Arsenal are just holding out for a couple more million quid, because that's not the case at all. You know, these deals are structured in certain ways. Sadly, we've got no information in the terms of the specifics of the structure of that deal, which is a frustration. I did ask the question yesterday, but we didn't get anything back. The only thing that I can tell you that I do know is concrete is that all of the offers that Marseille have put in so far have, to my understanding, have fallen well away from what Arsenal have and want for the player. Now, the big debate around Eddie Nketiah is, you know, how much people see his worth for, and whether or not it is worth Arsenal staying principled to what they deem to be his value. I've written and agree on the point of view that Arsenal are correct to stand firm on their valuation of the player, and ultimately he's on a wage bracket as well, £100,000 per week. You know, it's a sizable wage, especially for a club like Marseille to take on. However, in terms of a Premier League club, and there are clubs that are interested from the Premier League, we know that Bournemouth are now interested in Eddie Nketiah, of course, having just sold Dominic Solanke for around £65 million. We know that a mid-20s player in the Premier League who's an England international, £100,000 per week is not a respectively high wage for clubs to expect to pay for the player. I hope that we ultimately, I mean, Brentford, of course, we don't know what's going on with Ivan Toney. It could be that they then also look to somebody like Eddie Nketiah, but there is said to be considerable interest, not from just Bournemouth, from a number of clubs. And there is a feeling, of course, that still Nketiah could leave between now and the end of the window. I stand firm on the point that Arsenal are correct to try and get what they think these players are worth. We cannot sit here and moan and moan and moan that Arsenal do not sell well enough, that we do not get good enough fees for our players, and then want to accept a below market value figure for the likes of Eddie Nketiah. I had people being incredibly disparaging about Eddie at the end of the day, because I had people saying this guy is like, he's a non-league player. He's a League One player. I mean, you're embarrassing yourselves if you're using terms like this at the end of the day. The guy has got a very decent goal per start record. He's a full England international, as we know, having been called up after, you know, of course, taking on that starting role during a period where Arsenal really needed a centre-forward to step up. He's turned up in big games for us as well. We think about the winning goal against Manchester United. We think about him scoring at Stamford Bridge for Arsenal as well. The guy is far better than what people are giving him credit for, because they're just desperate. The big thing about this is people are desperate for us to sign a forward. And the misconception that people have is that Eddie Nketiah is blocking us from going out and suddenly signing a forward. He's not. If there's one thing that you should recognise from Arsenal's business over the last few years under Mikel Arteta, it's that if they find a player that they think is good enough to join this team, and if they think they can find a player that's going to improve on what we've got, be it David Raya coming into the midfield, be it Jorginho even being signed and started over the likes of Thomas Partey, be it Leandro Trossard coming in and starting eventually over Gabriel Martinelli, it doesn't matter who is there. If Arteta thinks that there is a better player on the market, they'll go and get them. If they are convinced by somebody that is available on the market, they will go and get that player. It is not a case of, if we don't sell Eddie Nketiah, Arsenal aren't going to sign a forward. Of course, it will help because the monetary side of things, the space in the squad, that helps. But if Arsenal were absolutely convinced that somebody would come in and are convinced that there is a forward out there that they could sign, Eddie Nketiah would not be stopping Arsenal from going out and doing that deal. We have talked about and have talked about for a long, long time on this channel that this market has been very tough. And we know that there are not obvious candidates for this forward area. And if there was, this would not stop the deal from happening. So please, please get that out of your minds, because that is not the case. I may open up the phone lines in part 2 for anybody that wants to challenge me on that. Feel free. But we're not going to be opening up the phone lines for people that just go and tell me I'm right. I don't mind people telling me I'm right, but purely if anybody really has an argument that thinks they can come forward with countering it, let me know. And you're more than welcome to hop on. I doubt you will, though. Anyway, last couple of transfer lines. Martin Zubimendi has rejected a move to Liverpool. This story breaking yesterday. Really, really big story regarding Liverpool, but of course linking in to Arsenal, because Arsenal have, of course, wanted Martin Zubimendi and have been really kind of like chastised in some ways, because we are in a position ultimately where we would like Martin Zubimendi at Arsenal and have been kind of battered from Liverpool fans over the last week because it was a case of like, oh, look, he's turned down Arsenal, but he's accepting Liverpool. Well, turns out, turns out that's not going to be the case, because Liverpool are not going to be getting their hands on Martin Zubimendi. He is going to be staying. Does this open up the possibility that Arsenal could return for Zubimendi in the future? Of course it does. Arsenal could return. I don't think that that's anything that's going on right now, by the way. I know you saw some claims on social media last night about, Arsenal having some kind of hand in this. To my understanding, that's just, people, I think, trying to be trolling of Liverpool more than anything. But what I would say is that this will have an impact this summer on Mikel Merino, because Zubimendi staying, of course, means that they aren't losing both midfielders this summer. And it will, of course, help, I think, in negotiations over the price for Mikel Merino. It is the sticking point with this deal. Why this deal has not yet happened is because Arsenal, just as they are standing firm on their valuation of players that they want to sell, they are standing firm on what they would like to do in terms of the negotiations on the price for a player. And that is what is key for Arsenal this summer, is making sure that not only do you get the players in that you need, but you do it for the correct price tag. We talked yesterday about how Chelsea have overspent on players on their estimated market value, according to Transfermarkt, by more than £280 million, whereas Arsenal have currently underspent, according to player market value, by just over £25 million, which means a £300 million difference between Arsenal and Chelsea's respective spending compared to player market value. And yet you look at where the two teams are and you know exactly why it is such a success to see Arsenal and where Chelsea are respectively as well. But we will wait for this deal. We'll wait for any breakthroughs in terms of negotiations on price tags. And of course, we'll bring that to you if and when they arrive. You don't need to negotiate any type of good deal for NordVPN, because the good deal is already on the table for you. NordVPN, of course, brings you a significantly improved service compared to far, far more VPNs out there by bringing you the ability to change your geolocation seamlessly, effectively to any of the territories that they, of course, are partnered with. It gives you the ability, of course, to stay safe online, keeps those pesky trackers from looking at what you're doing, from looking at your data and taking it away. I recommend that you go to nordvpn.com/Gooner to get yourself a significant discount off a 1 or a 2 year plan. And if you get that 2 year plan, you get 4 months extra thrown in free. I've not been messing that one up for a long time, but today I did. And of course, if you're not happy with the service for whatever reason, you get a 30-day money back guarantee as well. There we go. Right, we're going to go to part 2 and your questions right after this. Okay, this is part 2 of the show where, of course, we will be discussing your thoughts. I imagine, on the most part, will probably be centered around Eddie and Nketiah. And I understand that people are frustrated with this. I really, really do. But what is a frustration, I think, from an Arsenal point of view is, of course, that they have so far not managed to get anywhere close to what they would like to the player. What we do know is that they submitted an offer that David Ornstein, of course, reported that was nearing 20 million euros. That was back on July 31st, so 2 weeks ago. But we haven't really got too much in the way of information about how the breakdown of the supposed 27 million euro bid, and of course, how much of that was up front and how much was add-ons as well. So those clarifications, of course, are something that we would like to see. Let's go into the chat box. I can see that there's plenty of people that, of course, are slightly questioning my view. And if you are, feel free to hop on. Okay, so I'm going to jump the chat into. I'm going to jump the link into the chat box. Please, 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 don't join the call if you agree with me. I know it's really tempting just to get on the show and say, you agree with me. I'd like the challenge. You know, I'd like people to challenge the point. I'm more than open to change my mind on it if someone's willing to put across a solid argument on this. But it's important that it's not an echo chamber and we want to hear other points of view. So I think it's in the chat box. Is it surprised Cal? I'll be surprised if Cal jumps on, but who knows? Maybe you will need to be over the age of 18 and you will need a webcam. It's worth pointing that out. But make sure while we wait for anyone that wants to challenge the point. RevStat says, hi, Tom. Do you think that we should try and sign Osimhen on loan with an option to buy? I think he will definitely be leaving Napoli this summer, but nobody's going to pay his release clause. It depends upon if Napoli are willing to do that deal, if Osimhen is willing to do that deal. A loan with an option to buy. If he was to offer me Osimhen on loan or no one, of course, I'm open to the idea of Osimhen signing on loan with an option. I think you'd be mad to not, look at that deal as something to do this summer. Obligations are slightly different, of course, but when it comes to the likes of loans with options, I'd be much more open to that. Noon says, morning, Tom. Have you seen Man City's odds to be relegated have now been slashed significantly to being relegated? Is this a sign of things to come? No, of course, this does surround that there is going to be developments in the ongoing case surrounding the 115 charges. Difficult to comment on it too much because it's still very much up in the air. Right, shall we get our first caller on? If he's ready, Elliot. I'm hoping that you're going to be ready to come on, mate. Sit yourself down. How you doing, man? You good? You're in the gym.
I am in the gym, sir. I am in the gym. Sorry for a bit of the noise there. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Is there any music in the background? Because
there is. Hold on. Let me get out of here, and then
what I'll do is, Elliot, I'll get you back in the call once you're at the gym. So, because obviously, music-wise, I don't want to get copyright claimed. So once Elliot sorted that out, we'll get him back on. Izu says, now we have a few days to the end of the transfer window. Do you think there's something Arsenal is cooking the media doesn't know about at the moment? Of course, Izu. We know that Arsenal have been doing some secretive business because all of Arsenal's situations have led us to the point where Calafiori came out after he played at the Euros. Merino came out after Spain had already won the Euros. So all of those things combined, of course, tell us that Arsenal are actually doing a lot of things behind the scenes that we're not entirely sure of. Elliot joins us. What time in the morning are you going to the gym, Elliot? That's ridiculous. I know you're over in the States, so it must be silly o'clock, surely, at this stage. Or we might have just lost connection, actually. Oh, that's a shame. Maybe, Elliot, once you've got your data sorted, we'll get him back on. Elliot's doing everything he can to get on, but at the moment, we're struggling. Mark says, Tom and all, at this point, price, compatibility, and quality considered, which available forward would you go and get? I don't know, Mark. It's my honest answer. Leroy Sané is somebody I'm interested in. I don't know if he's available. I don't know how much he would cost. Is the biggest issue when it comes to this. Peter says, Tom, can Liverpool, can my pool team get a shout out? We finished 65th out of 765 teams in the amateur national tournament in Las Vegas. Team name is Ale. Yeah. Of course you can, Peter. Fantastic. Congratulations. And what a good finish that is. Is that what, top 10%? I think, yeah, top 10%. Very good. Manu says, any more information regarding Arsenal looking for feeder clubs abroad? My hometown team in Belgium could really use the quality injection like City are doing over here with small teams like Lommel in Belgium. No news on that yet, I'm afraid. Still heard absolutely nothing in that regard. Ashley says, morning, Tom. Should Kivior push himself to play more as a right-sided centre-half? Gabriel, Calafiori, Zinchenko only play left-sided with Tommy, Timber and injury concerns at backup right centre-back. There is minutes to be played. I think that Kivior has, of course, come into that position on a number of occasions this pre-season. So clearly Arteta does see that as being the potential for us to get that. Right, we're going to try and get Elliot for a third time lucky, we hope. How you doing, man?
Is this better now? Are we good here?
Yeah, okay. There's a bit of an echo, but I think it's because of the room that you're in.
Yeah, I'm in a like closed space, contained, and no sound.
What time is it over there?
3:23 in the morning, sir.
Why are you going to the gym at 3:23? That's crazy.
Well, that's where most things get done. You see, I mean, you get more things done now than most things people get done in a day. There you go.
Fair enough. I respect it. Yeah, indeed. Talk to me about Eddie there, mate. Talk to me about Eddie.
Okay, here's the thing. So, Arsenal are very, very within the rules, as they say. And FFP and providence sustainability will always dictate their moves.
Oh no, we lost him. It was going so good. Yeah. Oh, I'm really sorry, Elliot. It seems the connection's just dropped out again. Oh dear. Maybe it'll be fourth time lucky for Elliot. Is he back? Is he back? I saw it move. No, he's not back. Oh, that's a shame. If anyone wants to kind of jump in and try and save Elliot's situation by challenging the point, the StreamYard link is there. Again, just to make it very clear, only if you disagree with the point of view on Nketiah. Elliot's back in the room, but he's moving around. I'm sure he's trying to find a strong connection at some point.
Is this better?
I can hear you now. I can hear you.
Excellent. Are we good now?
I think we're good.
Okay, excellent.
So
Okay,
always trying to stay within the lines of FFP and profit.
Yes, I did. Yes, they do. And quite simply, they're going to try and do it with Nketiah. And what I believe will happen is they need to sell Nketiah to bring someone else in. They're very much about numbers and matching numbers. And one goes out, one comes in. You know that, and I know that this has been through the years with Arteta and Edu. This is what they do. However, this is what I think they'll be doing in this case. They need to sell Nketiah to bring someone in. I hear what you say by this shouldn't forbid them from doing something about the move itself. But Tom, Edu and Arteta are all about, living within the boundaries, living within the rules, and if they never falling outside of them. And I really fear that if we don't sell Nketiah, because he's been a great player with the club, nothing's going to happen in the striker role, and we desperately need that. Tom, I'll say this once, and I'll say it 1,000 times. We need at least 3 players coming in: a forward, a midfielder, and now we have the defender. So that's what I was saying. But at least a midfielder and defender. Now Merino, I don't know what they're doing. They're dithering. They're proving hard bargainers, and I get that. Fine, but we need to get that over line number 2, because that's proving to be very, very, very frustrating. And finally, Nketiah. I mean, what we had on the table with Marseille. Now I don't know about the particulars of the deal, but it was a deal worth doing. At the end of the day, we needed his numbers off the books. We needed his salary off the books. Now, if there's something in the background that they're working on, so be it. Let them prove us all wrong. But at the end of the day, I don't feel that happening. I feel that they want what they want for Nketiah, and they're not willing to dither from that price. Now, if they prove to be a hard bargainer, so be it. But if it costs us the league, then it's on them.
I don't think the difference between Arsenal winning the league is the sale of Nketiah. The reason why not is because I know that if Arsenal wanted to go and get a forward, and they felt that there was a forward out there that was going to change our title credentials, Eddie Nketiah's stay or sale would have absolutely nothing to do with it. And the reason why I know that is because they've already proven that this window, because Jakub Kiwior was linked with an exit throughout the course of this window to a lot of Italian sides. Did Arsenal wait to go and get Calafiori until Kiwior left? No, because they recognised Calafiori as a player that they thought was going to be transformative in defence. So they went out and got him, regardless of who they got rid of in defence. And I think the same thing would be the case for that position. And just a second point to put to you, Elliot, as well. We have moaned and moaned and moaned that Arsenal are not good at selling. That Arsenal sell players too cheaply, that we have a bad reputation in the market, and that is on Edu to change it. And now we're in a position where Edu is trying to change it. He did really well to get £34 million for Smith Rowe with a sell-on clause, a significant sell-on clause on top of that. Last summer, of course, getting 30 million plus with add-ons included for Balogun, 20 million plus for Granit Xhaka. You know, you can go back to other deals like Joe Willock getting you £25 million extra, but more recently we've started to improve things. How can we one moment say Edu's not doing good enough in sales and then chastise the bloke for trying to get us maximum value for one of our players when it's not, and I'm telling you, it's not vital that he goes in order to bring in a forward that we need?
Okay, well, be that as it may. If they bring in a forward, which we do need before they sell Nketiah, so be it. That would be a change. That would be a change of pace, and they did with California. They do it here. That's all well and good. But they have three. I'll reserve judgment because there's also 3 weeks left. A lot can happen in 3 weeks, so I'll reserve judgment. But the thing about it is, Tom, I don't want to be here in 3 weeks and Nketiah's still in the books. No one's being brought in, and Arteta will turn around and say, well, we have the players here. We have to, fall in love with the players we have and then move forward. And in that sort of phrase, in that turn of phrase. And it is going to be mighty frustrating because we're going to need all three players to face a team that is juggernautish as Man City is. There is no mistake about it. All three players are needed. If Edu pulls a worldie, hey, all praises due, all the power to him. But at the end of the day, something must be done. The pressure is on. We've had all summer, and we've been here at the last minute trying to get deals done. Ramsdale's not out the door yet. Reece Nelson's not out the door yet. Nketiah's not out the door yet. As we said, Kiwior's not out the door yet. All these players are still remaining here. Money could be gone from these players, and that could pay for literally, with the deals that we're doing here, our whole transfer window.
Well, the problem is obviously that there hasn't been any significant interest in buying Ramsdale. We've obviously had a loan bid today rejected. We rejected that loan bid from Ajax. There's no club that's looking to buy him. Kiwior, of course, has interest, but I to be honest, I'd keep the guy. I think we need depth in defence. I've been impressed with him. I think, you start him at Man City and you keep a clean sheet, you earn your stripes. Yes, he had a nightmare against Leroy Sané in the Bayern Munich game, but there are a few defenders that haven't had a nightmare against Leroy Sané. I don't think anyone should be, measured in terms of a conclusive, a conclusion on a player just because they have one bad game against Sané. I just think that he's good depth for us. He plays in multiple positions, and we need that going into multiple competitions this season. And then, of course, Nelson, of course, has had interest from clubs, but again, you're looking at a figure between 12, 15, if a push, maybe £18 million for Reece Nelson. Again, that's not an amount of money that's going to transform your summer window. That's not going to change Arsenal's ability to sign players. I just think there's far too much I think there's a panic, and the panic is that Arsenal won't sign a forward. And so, I have empathy for that position because I, like you, would like us to sign a forward. I think a forward is something that we do need. I'm not the one sitting here saying Arsenal don't need one, and if we don't sign one, good on Arsenal because we don't. I do. I think we need one. I think we need to go and find one. I don't know who that is. And when people ask me, which forward would you get? I'm not sure because Zubimendi to me isn't game-changing for the money that he would cost. Gyökeres is the only one I'd be really willing to maybe take a gamble.
I as well. I love Gyökeres. I think he's fantastic.
£84 million is something that we can do. Even if we were to sell Eddie, I don't know if an 84, because as a release clause, it's not like a negotiated transfer fee where you pay it in different structures. You have to pay release clauses up front, and Sporting are under no pressure to let Gyökeres go. They've only had him for a season, so they have no pressure to let him leave whatsoever. So financially, it's a really difficult... Same with Nico Williams. Everyone was like, well, Nico Williams is really cheap. He's got a release clause. Again, that release clause has to be paid up front, and his preference has always been Barcelona. And actually, his preference, it seems now, having just received a new number at Athletic Club, is actually to stay there. So I don't think he's going to go anywhere.
No, he's not going anywhere. What about Eze? I think Eze would be a fantastic deal.
I think we did a winger, and he's not a winger. He's an attacking midfielder like Smith Rowe was.
can play a winger too. I think from all accounts, I think Transfer Market has him listed as an attacking midfielder and also as a winger. I could be wrong. You're the expert.
On the left-hand side, though, when he play, I don't think I've ever seen him play right wing because Elise's always been there. Is that right?
Right. But at the end, it's such that we need someone who can, I think transform. Well, I wouldn't say transform our attack, but at least add to it. At least add a string to our bow in the attack. Because again, our strength is our defense. That goes without saying. Our midfield is getting there, and I think we have a lot of depth there. It's our attack that has holes, and everybody knows it now. And listen, I fear the worst. I really do fear the worst. If they can get a player in who wows our socks up, I think the closest to that is Gyökeres, and I think to be fair to me, I think that Sporting Lisbon can go down in their valuation of him a tiny bit in order to get him off the books if it's good money. However, listen, this is something that has been quizzing us for the last 2 months. I mean, we're down to the short and curlies right here, and who knows if Man City is going to turn around and do another deal that puts them over the top again. So we need to be prudent right now and move this thing forward because, again, a lot of people are frustrated at the fact that Nketiah could have brought us in some solid money. I know it's not top money, but it's solid money. And that could be transformative in terms of bringing in somebody in terms of our attack and lowering our amounts of fees that we have to pay to this new attack.
Look, last question, Elliot, just before I let you go. And I really appreciate you jumping on, especially at the time of the morning and interrupting your gym session. But realistically, who is the realistic forward? It could be a centre forward, it can be a winger. Is there a standout realistic forward that you think that Arsenal could sign regardless of the Eddie Nketiah situation?
I still bank on Gyökeres. I really or wild card, Ivan Toney. Ivan Toney's there. He's
Don't
waiting.
start me on Ivan Toney, man.
I know. We're going to start that Ivan Toney debate, but Ivan Toney's there. He's 40 million quid. He's cheap. He's valuable. He'll score your goals, especially with the service that we're providing. He can come in and do a job, and we can have a hell of an attack with Havertz and Toney up front.
When Ivan Toney came back in the second half of last season, do you know what his goal per shot ratio was?
You can tell me that, Tom?
It's 0.08 goal per shot. Do you know what Havertz's was last season?
Well, again, service.
No. This is goal per shot. So this is the shots. It's not about the service. It's about when they have shots, how accurate they are.
Right.
And Havertz's was 0.18. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to put out there, man.
Well, again, my top choice would be Gyökeres. My top would be Gyökeres.
If we can get it done, I'd take Gyökeres. I'd take that gamble. That's the only gamble I'm willing to do this window, but I'd take it. But,
I'd take it. Yeah.
Man, I appreciate your time. It's always a pleasure to chat.
And I appreciate your patience, Tom, especially this time in the morning. I went from pillar to post, trying to find a place that I can speak to you because it's been a little while.
Man, it works. We got it.
Yeah, it finally worked. We did it. And look, I was wearing a tonight. Look at that. Wow.
Oh, yeah. Rest of the part as well. Thanks, bro. I'll speak to you soon.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, Elliot. Lovely stuff. Always appreciate Elliot jumping on our phone. This is a regular feature. He always disagrees with me, but we always have a good chat. So it's always good. I'm going to take a couple of comments and then I'm going to get our next caller on, who's Chris, who's going to be waiting as well. Peter says, Tom, I'm trying to do a sidewalk chalk outside NYC Arsenal's bar for the most games this season. Can you think of anything I can write against Wolves this coming Saturday? I need ideas. Oh, I don't know. You have some suggestions from the chat box, Peter. It's not really my thing. It's not really my thing at all, but I'll have a think. Off the top of my head, I'm struggling. I am struggling. Let's go to Chilo, who says, what if Nketiah's fee is the difference we need in terms of money? I'm telling you, it's not. It's not. Arsenal don't have what I'd be described as FFP or PSR problems. Okay, we don't have problems. Arsenal want to comply with these restrictions, but they don't have problems. And while I don't think that Eddie Nketiah's sale will have any and has any bearing at all on if there was a player out there that Arteta, like Declan Rice, like Kai Havertz, like Timber, like Raya, like whoever you want to talk about that Arsenal have been convinced by to sign, there is no sale that is going to prevent Arsenal and Arteta in particular from going and getting that deal done. Okay, I think that's really key to point out. Right, let's get Chris on the show. Chris, mate, how you doing? You good? You well?
Hello, Tom.
How you doing, man? You good?
I think I lost you there, Tom.
Oh, I think there's a bit of a connection issue, Chris. Maybe find some strong Wi-Fi and then we'll try and get you back on the show, okay, man? There's a bit of a connectivity problem there, unfortunately, it seems. Kwame says, Moreno and Gyökeres can lead us to the Premier League title this season. Ben says, we can go for a star in Kvaratskhelia, a young player who's been in the Champions League final, and Adeyemi, or try and test for a superstar in a Rodrigo. Take your pick. I mean, Rodrigo would be nice. Don't know how much on earth Real Madrid would be asking for Rodrigo, but it would be a player that I'd be keen on. But again, don't know if he's available. A, don't know how much he would cost. B, Adeyemi, look, someone who's a big follower of Red Bull Salzburg, I know plenty about Adeyemi. I'm not necessarily convinced that he has been able to translate the talent that we saw in Austria to the Bundesliga with Borussia Dortmund so far. I've not necessarily been, blown over by Adeyemi. And I don't think if you're going to take a gamble, a guy that scored 3 league goals last season, I'm not necessarily convinced that Adeyemi is the guy that you bring. Kvaratskhelia is going to be £100 million plus player. If you're going to sign him, he's going to cost you way over 100 million. Right, let's check if Chris's internet's a bit better. Chris, can you hear me? Can you see me?
Okay, I can hear you. I can see you, Tom. Good morning.
Lovely stuff. Good morning, mate. Where are you joining us from?
Nigeria.
Nigeria, fantastic. Tell me where you're at with Eddie Nketiah.
First of all, I believe that Eddie is a fantastic player.
Fair play.
And I'm not of the opinion that whatever fee we get for him, just take it and let him go. Because I don't understand. This is a player. And I think there's a notion that needs to be corrected. There's this notion among our fan base that the players at Arsenal are average, they're not good enough, and because we are not winning the title over City, they're all trash.
We finished 2 points behind the best team the Premier League's probably ever seen, and we're average. Funny, isn't it?
It's very funny. This is the same set of players who won we took points off the big 6 teams last season. This is the same as the Nketiah who came in where Jesus was injured, gave us a victory in United, scored against Chelsea. This is the same with Nelson who scored that stunner of a goal. I screamed that day, my lungs were, God, geez. These are the same set of players. These same set of players that trashed Chelsea 6-0. The same Chelsea that we are being compared to. Can't you see Chelsea? They're signing this and doing that. What is wrong with our fan base? There is an agenda that we should how did Brighton become a selling club? By holding that for their fees, 100 million or not? How did imagine City selling Alvarez for 80, 90 million? Holding out for their fee. It's time we create that same image for Arsenal. Imagine coming for Eddie Nketiah with a 23 million bid. That's to show you the kind of image that's out there. And I believe if we cannot get if we're gonna get Eddie out of the books, stay with Eddie. We can't just go there sign for signing's sake. Imagine, Tom. I took a stat yesterday, and I observed that among the teams, the big European teams all around Europe, they all have one thing in common: a striker issue. Do account just City. Real Madrid now got Mbappe. Of course, Bayern Munich have Harry Kane. And who else? They all have a common thing, a striker issue. And if they're not going heads on for Gyökeres or Victor Osimhen, that tells you one thing: they ain't good enough.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right, mate. And I think that the striker market in general has been poor and is poor at the moment, has been for a little while. And this is what has predicated Arsenal's, caution when it comes to investing in centre forwards, because they know that there's potential that the striker that transforms Arsenal's centre forward position for the next 5, 6, 7 years is 1 or 2 transfer windows away. And if you go out and sign your Tony on a 4-year contract,
imagine Tony.
This is my I'm glad that you react the same way. I mean, and to be fair, you've jumped on. I know you agree with me, but you've jumped on because sadly, all the critics, as I put in the chat, they've disappeared like a Homer Simpson meme, it seems. But I think that Tony is not an improvement on what we've got. He's barely an improvement on Eddie Nketiah. I think Eddie Nketiah would probably score a similar number of of non-penalty goals for Brentford, to be fair. I really
More
don't
than,
think it's that
more
different.
than.
I don't know
more
if I'd
than.
go more than, but I'm not that brave. But I think I'd say that
No,
I don't think the
I can
difference
go.
in the number of goals that they would score for Brentford respectively across a full season would be that different. I really don't. So we're there. Chris, thank you for your time, mate. I'm going to jump forward to the chat
Thank
box.
you,
I feel like
Tom.
I'm neglecting them, but thank you for jumping on, mate. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely stuff. Good to hear from Chris, all the way from Nigeria. Fantastic. Let's jump to a few more comments. Someone tweeted me yesterday saying they knew today was going to be a longer show, and they're not wrong. it's turning into a longer show. But yes, it seems that there was a lot of vocal people in the first half of the show when we were talking about Eddie Nketiah, but they've all disappeared. It's funny that you put a StreamYard link into the chat. You say if you disagree, come and tell me why, but they're all gone. All disappeared. It's strange. It just keeps on happening. It's almost like the keyboard is really their weapon of choice. Anchor says Gyökeres would be phenomenal commercially as well for Arsenal because of his following and celebration. What do you think? I have no doubt that the signing, has a lot of benefits to it. You're not going to see me sitting here trying to justify us not signing Gyökeres. At no point have I sat here when I look at him individually on merit and say, no, we shouldn't be signing him. When we obviously were linked to Benjamin Šeško, I was looking at that thinking, well, that's an interesting market opportunity. He's available for a lower fee, significantly lower, nearly half the price, if you like, bit over half the price of Gyökeres. Younger profile, looks really exciting, technically good, but also has the aerial threat as well. And the technical side of Gyökeres' game has always been the question. The question about Gyökeres has been the technical element of his game, whereas Šeško has got that technical ability to his game at such a young age too. So I was always leaning more towards Šeško, I think, at the early stages of the window. But you'll never hear me going, oh, Gyökeres, nah, not worth it. But he's the only player that I would gamble on in this window if indeed Arsenal were able to do it. But I'm not sure Arsenal are able to go and spend £84 million up front on Gyökeres. It's a really, really tricky summer. You won't tend to get, the loudest voices will be shouting from the rooftops and moaning and screaming and crying about all this. But, it's the arguments just don't stand up to scrutiny. They really don't. The arguments just don't stand up, sadly. Anthony says, not even sadly. Now, Chris is waffling about Osimhen, says Anthony. It's funny this. Anthony's sitting there listening, telling us one of our callers who actually has got the courage, if you want to call it that, the bravery, the front, the clout to actually jump on the show. But Anthony's sitting there behind his keyboard. So differences, I guess. John says, regarding Nketiah, Nelson and Ramsdale to name but three. Arsenal does not need to sell them this summer, but for them to affect our FFP accounts this financial year, we can wait until January. Of course, any deals that we do for those players are going to be really beneficial financially for us because, especially Nketiah, Nelson, less so Ramsdale, because of course they are pure profit on the books because they come through the academy. Ramsdale, of course, there's a transfer fee there. We would have to make a profit to have that have an impact, of course, because of amortization. We've paid off what he's been here since 2022. So that 24 million upfront free with add-ons up to 30 million. You're dividing that was a 5-year contract. So testing my math skills now, like £4.4 million per season. 2 seasons we paid off on the books it'll be like 8.8, nearing 10, about 10. This season, of course, it'll be 3. But it's still a player that I think we can make profit on and should be looking to make profit on as well. Sam says, Tom, what is your value of the players that we want to sell? You can actually read, Sam, an entire article that I wrote about this on football.london. If you read, I think if you type in Tom Canton, 182 million windfall, and you can go and read it because I did a full piece on adding up all of the monies for all of the valuations of the players. I put Eddie Nketiah at 25 million plus, put Reece Nelson at 12 million plus, put Smith Rowe at 30 million plus, Lokonga at 10 million plus, Partey 15, Tavares 5, Kieran Tierney at the time, this was back in May, so it was a long time, way before his injury, I said 15 million plus, Zinchenko 20 million plus, and Ramsdale 30 million plus. So And to be fair, they've looked pretty accurate, these valuations. So I always do feel like it's an area that I'm pretty good at. Kid says, I know the stats head-to-head with Havertz and Eddie doesn't look to be the best, but Havertz's stats at Chelsea wasn't as good either, yet improved under Arteta. Tony in this Arsenal side produced more. There's always this argument, isn't there, that if a player moves to Arsenal, they produce more. Explain to me, therefore, then why Smith Rowe's numbers have suddenly improved going to Fulham. Surely if he's playing for Fulham, he's not going to score as many goals, no? Because your theory is that if he moves to Arsenal, you'd score more goals. You'd score more regularly when you're on the pitch. I know that the obvious answer to that might be, well, Smith Rowe's not really playing for Arsenal. But when he was playing for Arsenal, he was not really taking those opportunities, even when he was starting. Wasn't really scoring. So why? If that's the case, he's taken a step down in terms of club, but now all of a sudden looks good in pre-season. Looks like he's scoring goals. So clearly that theory isn't the case? No? I don't know. You tell me. Cass says, Tom, I'm going to wait and see what eventually happens at the end of the window because I believe business will be done both on buying and selling and then judge the business, what has also been done. Also, I think another good example is Balogun, right? Balogun's played Reims. I haven't been able to pronounce that. I'm hoping that's as best as I can do. Balogun went from Reims in France, where he scored. Let's have a quick look, shall we? Last season, the season before last, in for a mid-table French club, scored. Just getting up the numbers for you as it loads. 22 goals for Reims. He moves to a better club, more competitive team, Monaco. 22 goals changes to 8. So. Why? And that's 8 goals in 2,000 minutes, 22 goals in 3,000 minutes. So if you're going to average it up, it would be, if he was to go up to 3,000, it would have come out at about 14 goals. So he's actually gone down. That doesn't make sense. Let's go. Next caller on. It's Oki. Oki joins us, I think, making his debut potentially. How you doing, mate? You good, Joel?
G'day, Tom. You hear me all right there, mate?
I hear you, man. Where are you joining us from, pal?
Australia, mate. I have been on once before, a long time ago. But yeah,
you'll forgive me for my memory.
No stress, mate. No stress.
Tell me where you're at, because I think you disagree with me on this. So talk to me.
No, look, I don't actually fully disagree with you. I think you've had a fairly good argument, mate. But my position is more so on the player rather than the price, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily agree with some of the comments, not necessarily yours, but some of the comments we see in the fan base saying that the player is at a certain standard, that he's over 30 million, he's early 45. These numbers, the valuations, you've said it before, Tom, the club has a valuation of a player and they won't sell it for less than that. Fair enough. My position is we've had an issue at the club, and I'm happy to be contradicted on this or challenged by you. We've had an issue at the club where we have struggled to sell players that are surplus to requirements. Now, I'm not saying they're not good enough, but just surplus to requirements. Now we've got a situation where we've got Eddie Nketiah on 100,000 a week, and he's been determined by the club to be surplus to requirements. A bid has come in. Okay. Well, they're entertaining offers. We change it. Do you want to say they're entertaining offers?
They've entertained offers in the past of players that we were surprised that they would let go. So I think that any player has a price. All players have a fee that you would if a club comes in and matches, they would. I think Arteta likes Eddie. Like, I think Arteta rates the guy. I think that you're right to point out that Arsenal would be willing to sell, but we've been surprised that they've let players go. And I mean, look at Granit Xhaka last summer, for instance. He had the best season he's ever had in an Arsenal shirt. His stock was at its absolute highest. And I don't think really Arteta maybe didn't want to let him leave, but obviously Xhaka seemingly, I think, was more inclined to be the one pushing. And at the same time, I think in this case, Eddie himself also, I think, is a factor in this, that he's looking for that move.
Absolutely, and Granit wanted to leave for Granit's reasons, and Eddie probably wants to play and be a first team striker somewhere and have a career. I don't begrudge him that, and I have no issues with him as a person. He seems to be tip top and a great clubman. So with no issues with Eddie as a person. As a player, like we can criticize as long as it's within reason and respectful. I think people like rubbing his name into the ground now is ridiculous. Like for the fact that. It's something he's got nothing to do with. in terms of an offer being accepted, and now people are targeting Eddie. Like, we knew this was going to happen, right, Tom? But it is still poor. Going back to where I disagree is more so the fact of, if there's an opportunity to move a player on that we would entertain, I'm frustrated that it hasn't happened, because we've seen other players leave for free, and we've seen that happen a lot over the last few years, and we've even seen the club pay players to leave, right? Pay out their contracts. I have a fear that this is going to happen with Eddie, and to a lesser extent Reece, because I agree with you, he can be useful, and he can absolutely do a job in this squad. So this is not a Reece discussion, but I think Reece is the likely one that's going to go on a free as well because of his wages. And I think the wage discussion of Eddie, which I did have with you in the past about, I disagreed that he earned that 100K, and I wonder if that's affecting his ability to be moved on now, or for him to move on. Is his agent able to bargain with other clubs and other clubs' agents to get the deal that he wants at such a high price point? Could that loan? Sorry, Tom. One thing. Do you think that loan option, or that whatever they were discussing with Marseille, do you think that there was a question of how much of the wages that Arsenal would take?
Honestly, I don't know, is the honest answer. I don't know if the wages came into it. What I would say is that clearly whatever wage he was being offered, he was willing to move for, which would indicate, Marseille put in, I think we heard 3 different offers. And the first one was like 17 million. The next one was like 20 million. The next one was like 23. I'm talking about pounds here. I think, that those 3 offers indicate that clearly Marseille were willing to take Nketiah on at whatever wage he was willing to accept, whatever that was. We don't know if that would have been a cut. We don't know if that was the same, and at the same time, Arsenal know that there is interest from other clubs. It's not like it was Marseille and nobody. We know that other clubs like Bournemouth is being suggested across the board. David Ornstein, of course, also validating that, Fabrizio Romano last night as well. Bournemouth also interested. So when you're in a position whereby other clubs are interested in a player that you want to sell, and Marseille are offering a deal that is below what you want for the player, and that interest that you've got from other clubs has persisted despite the fact that you're turning down these offers. It's not like these clubs have also walked away and we've gone, Bournemouth have turned their attention to someone else, or other Premier League clubs. What we're being told is that on top of the Marseille interest, there is still interest from other teams. So if you're a selling club at this point with a player, why would you accept below what you're asking for when there is other interest out there for the player? Does that make sense?
It does, Tom. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Like, there's probably another fish in the water that might be nibbling at the bait, the Eddie bait. But I wonder, because we have seen these links with Eddie in the past. Again, I'm trying not to be pessimistic or negative, but we've kind of seen it. We've kind of seen it play out before, where we're told, look, there'll be other offers, there'll be whatever, and it just doesn't eventuate. And another year goes by, another year into his contract goes down. All of a sudden his valuation further drops, because, as you said, he's probably not necessarily in Arteta's plans, even if Arteta loves him. And I agree, he probably does. And you can see why, because he works his ass off. Like, he does, absolutely. You can't knock his effort, but he's not going to start ahead of Havertz, and he's not going to start ahead of Jesus or Trossard, in my opinion.
I think the issue that we've got, Oki, is that this is an unfinished conversation, because there are still 2 weeks left of the window, and we don't have the information of what's going to happen in those next 2 weeks. Because he
could go tomorrow.
He could. Yeah, it could be that Bournemouth come in with a 30 million euro offer, or which would be 27 million pounds, and Arsenal accept it, and we're all going, well, there you go, Arsenal were vindicated. But we don't know if that's going to happen yet. So we've got to kind of.
It's a gamble, though.
It is a gamble.
It's a gamble. For them, it's a gamble, and I think it's based on his record. I think that record, it's hard to not look at the number of appearances without the context. So I don't know how many of those are substitute appearances. Maybe FBref or something like that will give us that. And so it's harsh to judge a player by that. But at the same time, you are looking for impact then. Okay, he comes on, and what was he able to do? What was he able to achieve? It's hard for Eddie to sit there and go, no, you got to give him.
He's played 116 times in the Premier League, and he came on in 78 of those. So that's what, 22,
large majority,
38 starts you're looking at there out of 116 Premier League games, and he scored 19 goals. So I don't know how many of those 19 goals. I can't remember him coming off the bench and scoring. I'm probably willing to bet there was maybe 1 or 2 of those were sub, but he's not great when he comes off the bench. He's only really a main starter. So if we say that's 38 games, and let's estimate about 17 goals in 38 starts for Arsenal in those games, that's a record that's better than 1 in 3, slightly worse than 1 in 2. Which, if you're a Premier League team and you've got a striker that's scoring your goals at a rate that's better than 1 in 3, that's in the bottom half of the table, that's double-digit goals. That's double-digit goals.
Yeah.
He's not a penalty taker. He doesn't take penalties for Arsenal, so those numbers don't factor that in. And if you're a team down the bottom of the table, a striker that scores you more than double digits can be the difference between you staying up and going down, or the difference between finishing in the top half or the bottom half of the table in some cases. So, and if you're looking at from the Premier League perspective, I think that's a player that is worth spending near £30 million on.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to look at that the magical notion of Premier League proven as well, right? We talk about it a lot. And clubs, obviously, for a very good reason, want to get a Premier League proven player. They don't want to take a gamble with someone overseas. Just like us with Gyökeres, it's a fair point. Is he going to do it in the Prem? We don't know. Is Osimhen going to do it in the Prem? We don't know. It's a fair point. It's a risk. I think what I struggle to get across the line is, okay, Premier League proven, but you're paying 30-odd million pounds is what Arsenal want for someone that hasn't really proven it in the Prem, in my opinion. He's been... I think if there's other options on the market, and I'm not necessarily saying Premier League players, but other options in Europe, for example, that have presented great numbers, like not necessarily as good as Gyökeres, but you could take a risk at a 10 to 15 million, 20 million bracket, save yourself a bit of dosh, and then you potentially have got a bargain on your hands, as opposed to 30-odd million and 100K a week for Eddie. Which is a hard sell. Like, it's a hard sell for me. But again, who's to say the other clubs might be willing to take it? If Bournemouth want to do it, power to them, power to Eddie. I think.
I'm the only reason I'm moving hockey because I'm conscious of the time. I'm starting work in 2 minutes, so I'm going to have to wrap things up.
Mate,
I think you made excellent points. You definitely, I think it's a really good position, and I absolutely empathise with your point of view on it. Like, I empathise with people's frustrations that we haven't accepted that, or that we might not get the money that we want when there was an offer that a lot of people would suggest was fair. But I think the other side of the argument is also pretty strong as well. For Arsenal to change the perspective of them as a selling club, that we can't moan at one hand, about all the times we have paid players off, that we haven't sold players well enough. Now Arsenal are now trying to change that rhetoric, and then we're like, well, just accept the bid. So it's a really interesting one, and I'm really glad that you phoned in. So thank you, mate.
No worries, mate. Thanks for your content. I think everyone on here really enjoys it and loves it. So keep it up, Tom. Thanks, mate.
Cheers, pal. Appreciate it, Oki. And I mean, it's great to speak to the listeners in the channel. I know I can be snappy sometimes in the comment section. It's what frustrates me sometimes, and Oki's the evidence against this is that obviously you can type things in the chat box and then you don't show up. Hockey's shown up, and you've got to say fair play to the guys for the front of it. Thank you to everybody that's tuned in and listened. I'm wrapping this up quickly because I start working less than a minute, so we do need to wrap this up. But appreciate your time all. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning, bright and early, of course, 8 a.m, rounding up any of the news. Maybe we'll know more on this story. But for all those, I think the bingo card's right in force today. We had a few of the PR merchants in the chat, a few of the Arsenal lawyers in the chat. These people turned up. They actually came on the show. They didn't hide behind their keyboards. They actually came along. You had the opportunity and you bottled it. So come at me all you like, but time's up. Thank you for all your time. I will be back, as I say, tomorrow morning. Drop a like, subscribe if you're new. And as always, stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.